Thank you, everyone, for joining us today for a deep dive into how innovative banks are foregoing legacy to embrace AI and build for the future. I'm really excited to kick off the webinar today and would love to introduce our speakers, Danny and Mauricio. Danny, do you want to briefly introduce yourself and share what you are doing at Lead Bank?
Sure. Thanks, Trisha. Hello, everybody. I'm Danny Schneider. I'm the Director of Financial Crimes at Lead Bank in Kansas City, Missouri. We are a BaaS bank, and we are also a crypto bank. We support both industries. I've been at Lead for about 7 years now. Long time in the world of banking nowadays, it seems, to be at one place. I've been here as the BSA officer the entire time. And before that, I had a 7-year career at US Bank in a variety of different roles involving fraud, AML, and retail banking and management as well. So happy to be here.
Wonderful. Thank you, Danny. We're so excited to have you here and dive into how you've been thinking and deploying AI at Lead. Also, would love to introduce Mauricio. Mauricio, could you share a little bit more about what you do at CC Bank?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, my name is Mauricio Leandro. I've been in the financial industry for 15 plus years, 10 plus years in the compliance, BSA compliance, KYC, onboarding, and all related subjects. I've been through JP Morgan, names as JP Morgan, Apple Bank for Savings, Safra National Bank. Lately, last experience was at Deserve, so a credit card as a service company. And I've been here with CC Bank, Capital Community Bank here in Utah for the last year and a half as their BSA officer. It's been a great journey. It's a very unique space. CC Bank is both at the a community bank, but we also offer products through sponsorships with fintechs, and so these products we offer all over the country. Again, great journey, very dynamic space, and yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Wonderful. Mauricio, feel free to turn on the video if you'd like. So great. We're really excited to have Danny and Mauricio with us today. And to briefly introduce myself, I'm Trisha, founder and CEO of Unit 21. Unit 21 does anti-money laundering and anti-fraud operations for financial services companies. We work with companies like Chime. We're very lucky to be partnering with Danny at Lead. And what we really focus on is the post onboarding side of things. So we do transaction monitoring for AML, transaction monitoring for fraud, case management, regulatory filings like SAR filings. We do customer risk ratings, sanction screenings, and most recently, we've launched AI agents, which I'm really excited about. Just to touch base a little bit on Unit 21 and how we think about the world of AML, there are really three key foundational pillars of Unit 21. The first is speed with control. What we realize is fraudsters are continuing to change their strategies, and it's a constant game of whack-a-mole. So we have the ability that you can easily create, test, and deploy a rule within minutes. You can run a rule in shadow mode and see what different versions of the rule would lead to. And this has been really helpful for our customers to identify fraud and reduce false positives. The second is explain with conviction. In the world of highly regulated industries that we are in, it's really important to be able to explain to a regulator why an alert was flagged, what exactly happened for every alert investigation. And that's a big foundational pillar for Unit 21. So everything from customer risk ratings to sanction screenings, everything is something that you can control. And then finally, automate with confidence. We fully automate file SARs, CTRs, 314A, and a big focus for us going forward is AI agents, which we will talk more about on how can we help automate as much of the operations around AML and fraud today using AI. All right, so we'll kick it off with with two quick poll questions, and then dive right in. So the first is, are you actively using AI agents? Four options. You are. Second is no, you don't want to use one. And the third is if you're planning to onboard in the next 6 months or in the next 12 months. We'll give folks a minute to respond here. All right. Okay. We have over 100 folks responding. So let's look at the results. 31% are actively using AI agents. About 50% are planning to deploy it within the next year, which is amazing. And 20% are not looking to invest in AI agents. Danny, Mauricio, any comments, anything that's surprising you from the results?
Yeah, yeah, I'd say the 19%. Really curious to understand, why not looking to invest. Just AI and the how broad the use of it is for the good or for the bad is. The use of it is just a must these days, or studying that use. There may be institutions out there that where it may not be applicable, but
Mhm,
the percentage of it, 19%, 20%, it feels really high.
mhm,
Yeah, I would echo that. I mean, I think the way I look at this is regardless of how you feel about it or how you feel about implementing it or your own internal expertise surrounding the controls around it, criminals are already using it. They're using it every day. I see it come across my desk every day. Fake IDs, fake passports, chat agents that are used to scam people. Like it's here. It's not going anywhere. So if we're not even at least exploring it, in my opinion, you're falling behind the eight ball a little bit.
mhm. Yeah, yeah, I completely agree. If the people that we're trying to win this war against are using it, then we also have to use the best tools that are available. So let's dive into the second question, which is um, what is holding you back from investing in AI for risk and compliance? So Mauricio asked a really great question, like why for the 19%, as well as for the 50% that are still, you don't have something quite yet in place, you're interested, what is giving you pause? What are your concerns? So the options are accuracy, hallucination risk, explainability, that you have regulatory concerns, job preservation, which is a very legitimate and valid concern. Your current providers don't offer AI, and you don't see the value of AI yet. So let's give it another minute for people to respond here. All right, we're approaching 100, so let's look at what the results are. So explainability and regulatory concern is the biggest, which completely makes sense. Ultimately, in the AML world, we have to pass the audits and the exams, and that's really important. Accuracy and hallucination risk is the second biggest concern. My current technologies don't offer AI is the third comment. And it seems like very few people don't really see the value or have concerns around job elimination, which honestly is great. It really indicates that people are bought into using AI if the major concerns are taken care of. So let's dive right into one of the things um, that Danny you mentioned, which is criminals are using AI, and that is really legitimate. Today in Unit 21, we see fraud and AML attacks across our customer base. And ChatGPT came out in November 2022, and one of the things that we saw was there was a before and after moment. It was kind of like this huge moment where scams, and people always have been scammed since the beginning of time, but the level and sophistication of scams are now something else. I'm sure everyone has seen the Nigerian prince email, and you know that it's a scam because maybe there's a spelling mistake or there are punctuation errors or there's just like insane claim of a Nigerian prince who will give you money. But the that type of scam just doesn't happen anymore. There's actually very legitimate, believable scams that companies and humans or consumers are falling for, and the FBI is calling it the fastest growing crime today. So, Danny, curious, how are you seeing criminals use AI today?
Yeah. Would you mind pulling up that the passport? We see it a lot through both our digital asset customer base and our BaaS customer base to a certain extent, that they're using AI to craft false identity documents that look believable. And don't look at this passport on the screen and be like, Danny, you made a terrible passport. But I want to kind of explain the reasoning behind it. So ChatGPT, by the way it's designed, and that's who I used to make this. You are not supposed to be able to do this, because I asked it, make me a passport with this information. And it said, no, that's unethical. I can't do that. It took me a whole 30 seconds to ask it in a different way. And I just asked it to create me a business card that looks like exactly like a passport. And I found one on Google and uploaded it and had it input the information. I had the AI generate a much prettier picture of myself than I could put in there. And I just put in some information. And I'm not saying that this exact passport would pass a KYC vendor or pass the eye test if an analyst is looking at it. But keep in mind, I did this in about 2 minutes. And if you are on the dark web or you're on Telegram and you're using an AI model that was specifically built to do this, and I've seen some ones that didn't pass my test. I was like, that looks about as real as I've seen an ID document look. And we're seeing just mass quantities of people overseas, especially in higher risk markets. Like, I mean, Nigeria is still in play there. I mean, there is fraud at an industrial scale in that part of the country, or Southeast Asia in particular, like in Myanmar and Laos and Cambodia. And you have these massive call centers that are just doing this times a million, and they're taking money from people, they're filtering it back to their government. Like, you have the North Korean IT hackers that are crafting entirely fake identities via AI and getting onboarded at US financial institutions to funnel money back to the North Korean government under the guise of legitimate employment. So, I mean, it is happening. And maybe this does not impact all institutions directly. Like, maybe you are a smaller institution that only opens accounts in person. Well, yeah, like an AI crafted fake ID might not affect you that much. But when you start opening up online services or you open up overseas, especially, like, the risk is there. And they're doing this in the fact that I was able to do this with a program that you're not supposed to be able to use to do this. Imagine if you used one that is able to do it, and how good it could be and how quickly and at scale you could commit this level of fraud.
Absolutely. It's really crazy that you can give a different prompt and get something that looks, quite believable, right? And if you're especially using it to showcase an ID, if someone's not really paying that attention, then it would pass. And to your point, even if it doesn't pass certain KYC sniff tests, for me, this is a big indication that the traditional way of doing KYC is dead. it's so easy now to create deepfakes. And ChatGPT has those protections now, but you can just use open source models and tweak and tune it to be able to create fairly accurate looking documents. And
Mm.
and we really need to respond here very quickly because traditional KYC is dead. So, Mauricio, I'm curious, what are you seeing with respect to AI today?
Yeah, I think well, Dan's example is good in the way that it shows what we're seeing here at TC Bank as well, which is how widespread these types of scams occur, and how available these tools are to the average person. So, we mentioned the Nigerian prince scam, very unsophisticated, but that's from 30 years ago. But upwards to maybe 2, 3 years ago, it still needed a fairly robust fraud ring to be able to produce something like what Danny just showed us. And with the advent of AI, you don't necessarily need that anymore. That's available to your average fraudster out there, right? So it just increases the quantitatively, right? The amount of fraud uh, that can happen, right? So your average person can go in, and this is just Chat GPT, right? You have specialized services that I've seen be used to create these synthetic IDs, right? And so you can do that in a multiplicity of ways for fairly low cost. And I've seen come across my desk as well check fraud. So manipulated check images, um, which again are AI generated, right? Your typical fraud check, which maybe a few years ago was something that was almost dead, they would come as clearly manipulated images. You could see where a signature was copied and pasted over a different check image. But now the generative AI, is able to do that in a way that check looks real, right? It's able to pull an image out of the dark web, a check image out of the dark web, and transform that image into something that's very real, right? The signature deviates slightly from the original. The handwriting is virtually the same slant. It copies the brand basically of that person. So if you see these kinds of scams on the rise, that's AI is one of the drivers of it, and phishing scams as well, right? Same the traditional phishing scam, something that you could look at. Look at some signs where it's coming from, the way it reads. Somebody with a little bit of experience can tell what's a scam and what's not, looking at these emails. But nowadays, generative AI can also copy the brand of the company behind that email, right? The tone, the messaging, everything sounds really uh, real, and it's much easier for people to fall prey to that. And we can go on and on. Deep fakes, right? We had a bank in Hong Kong just a couple years ago lost $25 million because of a deep fake. It was a, a phone call from imitating their CFO's voice, and I'm not sure if it was one of those that we receive now and then, asking for the CFO asking for the individual to buy uh, um, just gift cards or something that easy, but they lost 25 million. I'm sure it was something more sophisticated. So these scams are also on the rise because of generative AI, right? So I've seen quite a few of those, especially in the check fraud piece.
Yeah, yeah. It is and the Hong Kong deepfake, that was just so crazy to me because if people aren't familiar, there was this hedge fund in Hong Kong that was scammed to release $25 million, and and there were actually controls. So it was supposed to be that, hey, if you get a wire request, then call the CFO and confirm that the wire request is legitimate. So the person called the CFO, and the CFO said, okay, let's do a Zoom call, and the Zoom call was made with deep fakes, and so the person got the approval over Zoom and then sent over $25 million. And so it's not really something that is affecting only a small section of the society. This is going to become more and more dangerous with time. So moving on, okay, we know AI is being used by criminals, and we have to use it as well so that we are coming back with the best defense and turn it into an offense. So how are both of you and your teams thinking about AI? Can you share a little bit more about how do you think about incorporating it in this year?
Yeah, so kind of at lead, how we're thinking about it today is on a couple fronts. Obviously, if you don't know, we are a pretty big BaaS bank. We have quite a few partners, so a lot of our program is modeled around that. So we don't onboard a whole lot of community bank traditional finance accounts in the market. I mean, we do have a customer base. It is slowly growing, but it isn't the biggest part of our portfolio. So if any of you on this webinar are working for big institutions or BaaS banks, the alert volume can get out of hand really, really quickly in a BaaS model, depending on how you have your program set up, whether you're doing all of the transaction monitoring for your fintechs, whether you're overseeing their processes, or maybe you're one of the banks that's still using kind of a middleware provider. I would advise against that, but that's a whole different topic of conversation. For us, it's volumes, and you almost can't hire people fast enough. And as you grow your teams, decision inconsistency becomes a real fear. Maybe one analyst looks at something a little different than another would. So how we're really looking at it right now is to automate some level of like L1 analyst work, doing the alert reviews, doing the alert dispositions, and forwarding those to more senior analysts for review. We're also looking at it from a sanctions perspective as well, to work through sanctions alerts. I'm sure people on this call knows that sanction software is not perfect, and there's always going to be a lot of false positives just due to the nature of what it is. So for us, it's really how can we save time doing these more menial tasks and focus my team's expertise and my team's time on higher growth areas for the bank. Like, we're almost taking an entrepreneurial mindset to it. Is how can we use AML to further the bank's growth, to further the protections that we offer to our customers and our clients. So those are kind of the two big areas that we're really looking into it right now.
I love that. People often think of compliance as a cost center, but if leveraged properly, it can be the reason that you can grow and can take on more and more and different types of business. And focusing on, one of the things is when we were thinking about what should Unit 21 do with AI, what should be our thesis and our stance on AI, when we looked at the different tasks that happen in the whole world of AML, what we realized is the most repetitive task is the L1 operation. And I would say 80% of the L1 operation is what I call hunter gatherer work. You're getting data from one place, trying to make some decision around the data, and writing a narrative around it. So you're not making a lot of complex decisioning. You're really getting the data, compiling it, doing some overlay analysis on that. And that can today be fully automated with AI in a very accurate manner. And with Unit 21, we today have 80 companies using it. We have seen a 50 to 98% reduction in the average handle time. That is the time to resolve an L1 alert. And the numbers are so incredulous. I had to ask the team to take a look at it again. But 60 to 80% is pretty standard. And to Danny's point, those resources can now be used on so many different things. I've never had one customer tell us, "Oh, we're swimming in resources." And so everyone is struggling with resources, and is the best use of our time really doing the most trivial L1 work that today can be automated. So I love the entrepreneurial approach that you're taking towards it, Danny. Mauricio, how do you think about it from implementing AI in the next 6 to 9 months?
Yeah. Yeah, the point you made is perfect. The scalability of it, right? So AI, we mentioned some of the fraud cases, right? How it can be used to hurt financial institutions and customers. But yeah, it can be used as a driving force to to improve processes, to augment the work that humans do on financial institutions. Yeah, so what CC Bank is looking at AI from a few different perspectives. A couple that I'm working directly with are we're looking at the transaction monitoring and case management platform that we currently use, and trying to see whether it's going to be the platform that's going to be with us for the next few years. Is it a platform that incorporates AI in a way that we can explain to the regulators? Is it something that's going to help the analyst work on a case? Is it something that's going to help them build the SAR narrative in a way that's almost ready to present to report? So we're looking at how this platform uses AI to improve our processes. Another aspect that's very important to us is the customer risk rating. So we're looking for a platform that can look at the model that's used to risk rate customers, and possibly make some recommendations, right? A lot of the platforms you see out there, either they use standard rule sets from everything, right? From transaction monitoring to customer risk rating, and they're static, right? They don't evolve over time. But with AI can look at our data and make recommendations based on our customer base, right? It can tweak that model and tell us what gaps, what is it that we may be missing that we're not seeing in the data just by using humans. So that's one of the initiatives. The other is on the onboarding side. So we're also looking for KYC, KYB solution that's scalable in the same sense, but that again incorporates AI in a way that can help the bank detect these kinds of fraud uh, attempts using fake identity documents or um, liveness checks or so. AI can also be used, on the other hand, to predict and see what is AI generated or not, right? So believe it or not, you also have these data aggregators that look at a driver's license, for example, and it's going to look into quite a few different sources for what that identity document should look like. What are some identifiers, some signatures that are intrinsic to that document, and then come back and say this is a fake ID. To the human eye, it may look perfect, but that's one of the signatures of AI, right? A lot of the documents, just like the one that Danny showed, it looks too perfect, right? The human eye probably won't detect it if you're just doing those manual checks, but AI can detect what AI did as well. So we're looking into incorporating AI in a few different ways here at the bank as well.
Yeah, and
I
I
love
can
it.
add on to that. You actually jogged something in my memory. Like other things we're looking at it for is like rule threshold testing, tuning. I mean, that's a very manual process for a lot of institutions. And if you're a smaller institution, maybe you don't really have that expertise in house, or it's kind of parsed out across the team, especially if you're like a community or a regional bank. So we're exploring it for that. We're exploring it for like RFI process. Like you go through the alert. We're looking to see how we can leverage AI where we have our procedures and we can train the agent with those procedures. And if there's a piece of information that's missing from the customer profile, the information available, open source searches, that it will actually craft an RFI email for us. So instead of the analyst having to go in and spend what 5, 10, 30 minutes putting this together, it's already ready, and all you have to do is copy, paste, and send. So I mean, I think from a purely financial crimes aspect, there's a lot of things you can do, but you can also use it to help some middle management processes. Like you can use it to assign work to people, like have a automated assigner, an AI agent that can analyze each agent's queue and workflow and assign alerts to agents that knows can take it. So I mean, really the possibilities are endless, and there's a lot of tools out there that you can do this with that can plug into anything. Like I know there's a lot of workflow automation tools you can use. I mean, if you're onboarding customers, you can use like AI, as Mauricio was saying, to look at business documents. Can they see if they're fake? Can they see if this is actually a registered business? I mean, the possibilities are endless. I think we're just scratching the surface on what banks can do with this, and it's a very exciting time.
Yeah,
Scary, but exciting.
that's no, that's true. I think with AI, right? It's the sky's the limit, right? I think somebody on the compliance space just has to think of how else it could help, and we've used it for the most mundane and repetitive tasks here at the bank uh, with success, right? So it's not a perfect solution, but it helps save a lot of time. For example, if you're drafting a new policy or rewarding a new policy, right? You have to have that documented policy for when a regulator comes over. Well, that document may be 20, 40 pages long. You can have AI build a structure for a document where you're going to read and adapt to the reality of your financial institution, or you can have a document, redact, take everything that's confidential out of it, but have AI review it for you and tell you, are there gaps, are there inconsistencies, right? And so AI can do that just in a matter of seconds, right? You can come back with that, so you have another set of eyes looking at that. But we've used it to build RFPs. You use AI to build again frameworks for those, right? Succession plans. We used to do responses to regulatory requests. A lot of it is typically very manual, but AI takes a lot of the heavy lifting out of that. I guess one thing to say is that AI is just that the it's like the same, right? A confident fool goes farther than a hesitant genius. So AI is that confident fool that's going to make that document that looks perfect. But if you stop and look at it, it may have no bearing in reality, right? It just looks really good. So at least for now, we really need a few other sets of eyes to vet anything that AI spits out. So.
Yeah, you know what? It's just amazing to hear the different use cases, that the possibilities are truly endless. I think that's what you said, Danny, where you could almost reimagine every single thing and say that, okay, if you built it with AI first, what would that look like? And there are, of course, the cases where on the L1 operation, where, and that's why we've been focusing a lot on Unit 21, is to help automate a lot of that so the team can be focused on more strategic work. But I also really like what you said, Mauricio, and I recently heard this around policies and drafting of policies, and instead of having to work on a 20 to 40 page document, which would typically take you a week, now you can use AI, and you still need to review it and ensure that it is in line with what your company's policy genuinely is, and you avoid this confident fools issue. But it gives you a framework to get started, which really reduces the time significantly. So it's amazing. One of the things that kind of surprised me about this poll question was that 16% of the folks here said that their current technology does not offer AI. And as a CEO of Unit 21, when I think of our company needs to buy a tool, if it doesn't have AI, or at least some type of AI that they're going to implement soon, then I feel like, all right, what are you doing, right? Like, why am I going to be working with you if you can't bring me into the future? And so I would highly recommend that you, um, for the 16% of folks who don't have any software that offers AI, to really see what's out there. Because if you're not ahead with the latest technology, then it's just going to be a disadvantage for the institution. Yeah, I'm curious on the note around AI. One of the problems that people often have, and I was again a little surprised that people didn't share this, which might be really a great indication of the team of folks that we have here, but of job preservation, of job elimination. But this is something that I've heard where people say, "Oh, my teams are hesitant of adopting AI because they feel like their jobs are at stake." So both of you have been leaders in the whole AML world for years. What is your perspective on, is that a true statement? If that is a true statement, then what does the future look like?
Yeah, I have kind of two answers to that, and I think a lot of it depends, in my opinion, on the type of institution that you work for. And I think JP Morgan recently just came out and said they want to use AI to replace a lot of the functions that they've hired. And I don't think that means layoffs. Maybe it does mean layoffs, but they're saying like they want to slow hiring and leverage AI more. So maybe from those massive worldwide organizations, they may downsize their force a little bit in that area. But I mean, I'll be fully transparent. I've had people on my team come to me and be like, what does this mean for the future of my job? And how I view it is not workforce replacement, but rather like augmentation. Like we're here to make your job easier so you can focus more on our higher risk areas, because I mean, it's the favorite word, right? The favorite phrase, risk-based approach. The phrase that means everything and nothing at the same time to banks, to financial crimes people across the country. And if we can, based on our enterprise level risk assessment, which you all should be doing at a very intense and high level, if we pick out our highest risk areas and we can use AI to really handle a lot of the lower risk areas of the bank, I can then focus more resources onto our high risk areas, which should hopefully give the regulators much more comfort that we are dedicating the proper resources. And I mean, as you said earlier, Trisha, like resources can be a struggle in this line of work. And at Lead, what we're trying to do is we're trying to reframe that perspective and be like, we can exponentially increase our growth without sacrificing compliance, which is how some of these BaaS banks in particular have gotten consent orders. They've gotten in trouble because they grew too fast. They didn't have the staff. They didn't have the framework. This can augment a lot of that if done correctly. And you know, I'm not going to sit here and say you should dive headfirst into the world of AI. I would encourage you to ask questions, be thoughtful, make sure that you understand it, because I know they also mentioned like explainability is a big concern, and it was for me too when I first started hearing about AI. I was like, how in the world am I going to sit here and explain this to a regulator? Um, but in terms of workforce, like it allows you to focus your resources where they actually need to be. The resources that will be protecting your institution, your customers, and reporting, you know, all the bad actors to federal law enforcement.
Yeah, and I'd complement that by saying that it's. I think that's a myth, right? I think at first you look at AI and hear some stories, and it really sounds scary how it automates a lot of these manual processes. And you know, is half of my team going to be gone, or is my bank going to let go of every consultant that they have? And the way I think about it is just like any other emerging technology for the last 10, 20, 30 years. Take the internet as an example, right? 30 years ago, somebody looking at it, there were scary aspects about it, right? Making payments online, it was it was no man's land, right? There was very little in terms of regulatory framework around it, and it could and can be misused, right? AI is akin to that, but if you look in hindsight, right, what financial institution was not uh, diving headfirst into digitizing their processes, making their products available online, right? Making uh, uh, online payments available to them, right? If any institutions were too slow to adapt to the internet 30 years ago, they're probably gone, or they're probably lost a lot of growth opportunities in the meantime. And with AI, it's the very same, right? There are risks associated with it. There are ways to adopt it. You do have to find the right tool for the job when you're looking at AI, and it can have different uses in different areas of your financial institution, but it is a reality, right? The bank financial institution must look at it and look into ways into how it's going to augment the present workforce, right? If the bank is not using your human resources in a smart way, maybe there's some negative impact. But going forward, uh, I don't see a path where AI is going to, dislodge, maybe make people lose their jobs, at least not in our industry. I think it's just a matter of uh, using resources in a better way. And I'm one example here at the bank, right? Uh, because we use certain robotic agents, right, to review alerts, to acknowledge or clear alerts. Well, one of my analysts is able to work on a training program for the BSA department, where he typically not have the bandwidth because he was just clearing so many watch list alerts all day, right? So now that individual can thrive and show his expertise in other areas that must be done by a human being, whereas before he wouldn't be able to do that. So again, just using AI for to clear that repetitive work or so the humans can do uh, a better job and thrive in other areas. That's how I see AI.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a common thread in what both of you said is that there's a lot of work. That's the truth, right? In compliance, there's no shortage of work, and we can really focus our people on the most important strategic work versus paper pushing work, which AI can really take a lot of. And I really like what you said about the internet, Mauricio. I really think of it that way, where there was a fax machine, it was working fine, and an email came out. And, as a person in 95, I had two options. I could say, okay, I'm going to embrace the email, or I could say, I'm comfortable with the fax machine, so I'm going to use a fax machine. And now, if you think about it, 30 years later, 2025, who is more employable? Or even 10 years later, right? 15 years later, who's more employable? Is it the one who decided to stick with the fax machine or the one who said, all right, let's be at the cutting edge of technology? So almost my response whenever someone brings up fear of job elimination, which is very real and for sure a true fear that I don't want to dismiss in any way. The only way to get truly ahead of that is to be at the front of technology and start becoming an expert in how to leverage that. So, you both also talked a lot about risks around explainability, and this is also something that people shared around some of the risks around accuracy and regulatory concerns. So, can you share a little bit more around how can explainable AI be implemented so that you can get the best of both worlds? You can get that degree of automation and efficiency that you want, but also um, you, from a regulatory perspective, you can have regulatory defensibility. How do you both think about it, and what have you found to be effective?
It's yeah, on our end, it's a matter of as you're looking at vendors that provide this kind of that use AI models in any of their processes, it's a matter of understanding exactly how they're using it and seeing exactly what documentation they have on their end uh, that you could leverage with the regulator, and that has to be done prior to onboarding those vendors. So I think one thing that tends to happen is you have the careful financial institution that's going to wait until AI plays out and then start adopting it. I think that's a mistake, but the opposite mistake is also true, where uh, an institution just adopts it uh, face value, the first vendor that they see, and they're just impressed by their bells and whistles. They don't completely understand exactly what the solution does, and it may be doing something that's positive, but if they can't explain that to a regulator, it just shows that they took a risk that they don't quite understand. And that's just like any other risk a bank could take just by onboarding a customer they don't do proper due diligence on, or adopting a product that's riskier than they can handle. AI is the same way, right? Due diligence must be done. You must see if that vendor has a documentation, if they have that level of expertise, if you can understand that prior to onboarding them, and if you're able to explain that back to a regulator when they're there. I think it's it's important to do that due diligence well first before adopting that any tool.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree, and I think that that concern and that question, I think that expands outside of just our like financial crime remits as well. But I mean, if you are, maybe a more complex institution and you have a model risk person, or you have an enterprise risk team, like they need to make sure that you have policies in place around your use of AI. What do you use it for? How do you use it? Do you use it to decision things? Because I think when you add in the decisioning aspect is where you have to get really, really crisp with how you understand how it works. Like, not saying if you use it in kind of like a data aggregator function, okay, like, yes, you have to be able to explain it, but really at the end of the day, it's just aggregating your own data, which almost every tool, every program now has that capability built within it, like within Excel or Google Sheets or Gemini or whatever. Like, so I mean, I think don't overcomplicate it is my advice. Like, keep it simple, stupid is kind of something my dad always said to me growing up. And just keep it simple. And if the vendor can't explain to you how it works, then you maybe should find a different vendor to do it. Um, in something I like to do with auditors and examiners is I'll pull an alert that's done by an AI agent, and I'll pull an alert that's done by one of mine, and I'll show it to them side by side. And I'm like, can you tell me who did what? And if they can't, that means we've trained the model correctly. So I think don't overcomplicate it. Make sure all of your relevant teams at your bank are involved, like your enterprise risk people, information security, legal, regulatory. I mean, all the alphabet soup that we'll throw out of all the teams under risk in a bank. But I think just, there's a lot of resources out there too on the internet. Like you can find anything that you want. And if you can show them this is how we do it and this is why we do it this way, I've not had any pushback from that.
And one thing that I wanted to point out, somebody made a comment here on the chat saying AI can explain itself to a regulator. Yeah, I really wish we were there. It'd be really great to have them to have ChatGPT or whatever in the Zoom meeting with the regulators, and have them just to explain that to them, or explain it to yourself so you can explain it to them. We're not quite there yet, but I thought it was interesting. Again, it's just thinking outside the box of ways AI can help. But that would be just a perfect world type of scenario.
Yeah, I was at an event in Portland a couple days ago, and someone was joking that I wish there was an AI agent that could talk to the regulator, so I don't have to do it. And I was like, we're not there yet, but um, maybe one day. I really love the whole crawl, walk, run approach, and to keep it simple. It's really important. Sometimes we talk to companies and they really overcomplicate it, and the question is, okay, before going into the full on marathon mode, let's like learn how to walk. And there are ways that you can do that. You can have the AI, for example, on the alerts, just give a narrative or give a summary. And then the human still makes a decision, but there's a lot of automation gains you can make, but you're not fully automating, dismissing an alert as a false positive or escalating to a true positive with just an AI. So there's a lot that you can do with respect to a crawl, walk, run approach, and you should be able to do that. So that is a really important philosophy, because sometimes we in this world we can get really, really wrapped up in a big policy for how to deal with AI, and let's just solve the problem ahead of us. One thing that I'd actually love to get both of your thoughts. So you both are amazing sponsor banks. You work with a lot of different types of fintech partners. You have a lot of different programs and unique types of programs that you manage. So how do you think about data sharing? That's something that comes up when we talk about AI a lot, is data sharing, especially when you are managing different types of partners, and you get a lot of different types of data.
So I mean, it's an interesting thing. And I think there's a lot of different ways that you can accomplish this. But I will say from our perspective, where we noticed a lot of failings, at least in the BaaS space, is not having all of the correct data. Whether your middleware provider, which is why I kind of made that comment earlier, doesn't provide it to you, or it's inaccurate, or you have no way to validate whether it's legitimate or not, that can cause a lot of problems because all of us in AML know, like crap data in, crap results out. It's just the nature of how it works. So kind of how we've set it up at Lead is we get all of like all of the data. It's sent to us every day, and that's regulatory compliance data, that's KYC information, that's transactions. We have a pretty complex internal validation system built where it can detect missing data and it kicks files back to the fintech to fix and resubmit to us. We have API real-time capability for some partners as well, so the data just comes over throughout the day. Because I mean, at the end of the day, your AI model, if you're going to leverage the data you're collecting from your BaaS partners, it's only as good as the data you're putting into it. So if you don't have strong data integrity, your accuracy of your AI is going to be, well, wrong, probably. But I mean, would it be any more wrong than a human that's also looking at bad data? Probably not. Probably about the same, but that's how we kind of look at it.
Yeah, that's it's a similar approach to what we're doing here at the bank. I think one thing to add to that is, at least from a more traditional financial institution, their perspective, right? How exactly that data is going to be fed, and that's one thing that we're using as well in our vetting processes. The typical batch data process. That's where a lot of banks would veer towards. Um, it's just a commonplace, and I think API is more of a reality that has to be embraced. I think a bank is much better off investing in that, uh, and that's in terms of providing real time data, data accuracy, scalability. That the API route it checks all those boxes, right? I think that's one thing that we decided to go with. And I think another thing regarding data is on the vetting process, right? The vendor, I think the bank must understand, again, same, it must be able to explain that, but must understand exactly, you know, is the is that entity going to be using our data to train their models? Are they going to be sharing that data uh, with other vendors or users? Is it anonymized? Is it going to be shared with third parties? Larger models or so. So bank must have that kind of care to understand exactly how that data is being used. Right? When we're talking about sensitive data, it's great to have that part of the due diligence covered prior to adopting any new technology.
Yeah, absolutely. And Danny mentioned this before that check with your enterprise risk team on data governance and data security. For example, for Unit 21, if you use our AI agents, none of that data ever gets trained on, and none of that data goes outside of the Unit 21 environment. And so if you're looking at different vendors or thinking about it, it's certainly possible to do that. And so know that if that is something that the bank requires, that is available. All right, we have 5 minutes. So maybe the last question I have for both of you. So let's say I'm going to be implementing AI today for my bank. What is the one critical criteria that I need to have and the one critical criteria that I should let go of?
Yeah,
Go ahead,
I'll go
Mauricio.
first. I wasn't muted. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So I'd say explainability is one that we just touched upon so many times. I think that's first and foremost. You really need to understand and be able to explain what the vendor is doing using AI, and then yeah, that data due diligence, understanding, and sometimes it's just an assumption on the part of the financial institution, right? So Unit 21 does that, right? It retains that data. Data is not used to train other models, but a financial institution may miss that depending on who is doing the due diligence. So it's important to involve other areas of the bank, your IT, InfoSec departments, for them to be able to give a different perspective and ask questions such as this that somebody with a purely compliance background may miss, right? So the due diligence process has to be broad enough for you to have no blind spots in your investigation, I guess.
I would say for me, the most critical thing that you need to make sure you keep in mind and look at is what problem you're trying to solve. Like, I think if you just try to implement something without a real clear view of what problem you actually wanted to solve, it's going to be difficult and it's going to be hard to explain and it's going to be a challenge. So you have to find out what you actually want to do with it and then be laser focused on instituting that. I would say the critical thing that you need to get rid of is that, well, the regulators won't understand it. Like I think that's an assumption, and I can just say from my own conversations with our regulators, both state and federal, if they're on board. I mean, I'm not going to speak for them and their own missions or anything like that, but like we've gotten very good feedback from our discussions on how we plan on doing this and how we're slowly doing it. So I guess like the fear of the regulators is what I would get rid of because they might be more open to things than you think.
I love it. Thank you both. This is super helpful to dive into how people should be thinking of AI. We have an AI buyer's guide that we created at Unit 21 as you're looking to buy different AI solutions. What are the questions you should be asking? How should you create an RFP? So feel free to take a screenshot of the QR code. We are also doing a webinar in on AI governance in July. Um, it'll be on July 16th. You can find more information on our website. And it's going to be on AI governance and how you think about that. And and finally, we will be sending out an email for an invite to a Unit 21 product demo. So this is going to be really for you to be able to see how we think of AI. And as you embark on your own AI journeys, it'll be a helpful way to look into that. So I know we only have 2 minutes left. The one last question from the Q&A that I think would be helpful for, and I know there's a few questions that we weren't able to get to, so apologize about that. But one last question that I think will be helpful is, what type of tech education do you think is most valuable for compliance professionals?
That's a good question. Um, Honestly, this is not probably the greatest answer in the world, but just Google. There is an unbelievable amount of very easy to understand information out there. A lot of platforms also have educational materials on like how AI works and things like that. Coursera, if anyone has ever heard of that, they offer like free like Ivy League level college courses for a lot of this stuff. I've personally taken some of those on like crypto and the blockchain and cryptography and things like that. I mean, it's kind of the beauty and the curse of the internet is you can learn everything and some of the things you see are not good. So just a little, and also reach out to like ABA, like the or ACAMS, ACFCS, like a lot of those trade organizations have really good resources available for you.
Yeah, so definitely, I'd say the same. There are plenty of different webinars out there. A lot of them do come from third-party vendors, right? And you do have attendees with different types of experience or so that you can reach out, or just during the webinar, solutions are offered. And aside from Googling, obviously using ChatGPT or the generative AI model of your preference, I think it's a good starting point, like Danny said, to get that, to know what resources are available out there to give you a guiding point or so. I think it's important to use that way as well.
And if you're on this webinar, then you really care about education. So hats off to you. And I know we're at time. So thank you so much, Danny, Mauricio. Thank you for everyone who attended and took your time to dive into AI. This is such an exciting time. It truly is such transformative technology. And I can't wait for the next time we do this webinar in a year or so, what we're going to be talking about.
Yep. Super great.
Have a good day.
Thanks, Risha. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.